Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll get the public hearing started. The purpose of this is to talk about the water rate increase we would like to have in the city. Anybody want to open up questions?
Yeah, who we looking at here?
This is Todd Swanson.
Excuse me?
Todd Swanson.
Okay, from?
Yeah, I'm with Steptoe and Johnson out of Charleston. We're a PSC counsel for the city. And any questions you have about the legal process or anything, I'll be happy to answer those.
I'm Michael Griffith. I'm the CPA for Piedmont, and my firm's developed the rates, and we're working for the town on the projects.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Terry Lowry's Region 8 Planning Development Council. I've probably seen most of it, y'all seen me before.
And I'm Ryan Ewing. I work with Todd Swanson at Steptoe and Johnson.
Do you want to give them a little bit of basis of how you came about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as far as the legal process for a rate ordinance, it requires 2 readings, which we had the first reading back in December, in addition to the second plan reading, which is tonight. A public hearing is required, which is open to the public. Anyone who wants to say anything, that's certainly your legal right tonight. You're happy to make any comments you want to make for or against. If you have questions about specifically why is the rate increase what it is, that's certainly Michael's area, and he can explain that to you. Certainly plenty of justification for that and why the city does need to increase its rates. A lot of you are probably aware that there are projects associated with some of this going on with the change of the water source and whatnot. So the engineer had planned to be here. I don't know if you heard from Fred.
I thought Fred was coming.
Yeah, when I talked to him on Monday, he was planning to be here. So if Fred comes, you have specific questions about the project, not exactly why we're here tonight. We're here just for the rate increase. If Fred shows up, he can be able to answer any questions about that. So the rate increase, as far, I'm sure most of you got the customer notice. The increase for an average residential bill, which is about 3,700 gallons, is about 56%. Is it the increase? So if you did use the average bill, that means your rate right now is about $38. The increase does go through council approves, so that would push it up to about $59.
Because I told him we use a 2,000 gallon thing. So
Well, what would that be?
$14.30.
More a month?
That'd push your minimum bill up to $42 a month.
For just the water. You have sewage on top of that.
And
Now that will all,
Oh.
now, you're raising the water rates. Now, our sewage rates are based on our water rates, so am I right to?
Well, no, your sewage bill is based on how much water you use. It has nothing to do with what water rates you pay. So
Well, it does on your minimum.
No,
Yeah,
that's not.
well, sure it does.
It's still based on the amount of water you use.
Amount of water you use.
Gallons. So your sewage is 110% of what your water is?
That's not the way it's calculated, though. It's based on your gallon. So this rate, this will not change anything.
Well, you use 2,000 gallons whether you turn the spigot on or not.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to base your sewage on that also, correct? So what I'm saying, if you're going to raise the water rates, am I right to expect that my sewage rates are going to raise too?
This does not impact what your sewer.
So then the sewer rates won't be 110% of the water?
No, it'll change. That percentage is just for, that doesn't have anything to do with how it's calculated. It's based on the gallons only. So your sewer bill, if you use the same amount of gallons today as after this, the sewer bill won't change. It's only the water.
It'll stay the same?
Yes.
Okay, to ask you, my bill runs, well, $88 a month. Okay, how much would that go up? I need, not percentages, I'm not a math major, I need money. I live on a fixed income and I need to know what's coming out Because I know what's coming in, so I need to know what's going out.
So you're saying yours is 88 total water and sewer?
Yes.
And you're saying you use the minimum amount?
No, minimum is 58.59.
Okay.
Okay, it's 88, where I rounded it out for you, I don't know what it is percent, but that's where it usually runs, so tell me how much would that go up?
Well, I would be glad to look at your bill and the gallons and tell you if you want to know exactly. I would be
Well,
glad
just
to
give
look
me
at
with you and your percentage, what is it? You said 56%?
56%.
Tell me what 56% of 88 would be.
So your water bill by itself is $88?
Uh-huh.
Or your
No,
sewer.
no.
Well, it's
That's the
everything.
water,
It's the sewerage, taxes, or whatever they put on that
No,
bill.
this only affects the sewer charge, the water charges only, doesn't affect sewer at all. So it only go up the piece of what your water bill is. So if your water,
A minimum water bill is like 27, isn't it? 11.
I'd guess that your bill, I'm just estimating, I'd say your
Okay.
bill's going to what? You're paying 88,
Probably
you're going to pay
102.
about 110.
Okay. See, I need to know money, because I have so much coming in, and I need to know what's going out.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people here, I don't think they're going to a water increase. I mean, if that's what you gotta do, that's what you have to do. But the amount of the increase is what, I think that's, and I'd like to know, how did you come up with that?
maybe you need to go through it, that way it might help a little bit. When we first started looking for Piedmont about the financial condition of the water utility, we went through all your fiscal year 18 filings, your financial reports, how much everyone uses in Piedmont, the bills, and the obligations that you pay from water only. We segregate this is only related to water, what we've looked at. And the 18 year and 19 continued, they actually had at least a $50,000 actual loss in 2018. And 2019, it looks like it remained similar. And we saw that the depreciation fund that they had set aside, it was there in 18. They had used most of their monies in 19 because they didn't have an increase in revenues in the fiscal year 19. And there's been a couple things. It has the laws changed, the obligations for Piedmont. There's been several big impacts that have hit them and all other cities in West Virginia. They're required to have a working capital reserve of funds available of at least 12.5% of their operation maintenance. They ended the year at $700 in 2019 was their cash balance. They're in desperate situation as far as what your rates are. Teetering on, I mean, before we even talk about, future things that are gonna happen, today, being able to pay bills and your obligations for the water, it's a desperate situation. And the other one is, now Piedmont is required to have rates that cover their depreciation. That's something that, I don't know if some of you are in business or you're familiar with that, for governments and nonprofits, that's never been too much to worry about because you're not paying for it. It's not something we pay out in cash. However, by statute, their rates have to be able to cover that now. And that doesn't mean we have to pay it out. The rates that we propose have to meet the current statutes of the state. And that's another thing that we have to do. But by the token of fixing the cash loss, it resolves that issue as well. And when you talk, our projection, if without an increase and without some funding, would be in excess of $60,000 loss going forward. You only have $155,000 in annual revenue. So that's why it's such a big percent, because you have a small customer base and it's such a large impact as a percentage basis, and it raises your rate to around $56. When we compare you to other places in West Virginia and the funding agencies that decide funding, when they compare Piedmont to all the other places, they use 3,400 gallons. That's the calculation. The rates that are proposed for council now put you at 56, which is a pretty large percentage and dollar impact increase to you, but it puts you pretty much in with the average, with the statewide average for residential customers. And I know it doesn't matter if you're in Piedmont, it doesn't matter what somebody's paying some other place, but I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor of that. And the rates proposed here would put you at a cash flow surplus of $2,800 a year. And I can tell you that's not very much for a water utility, but that gets you back on even keel, that meets your requirements under the statute, and allows you to go forward with whatever is going to happen with the water source issue. This is something that needs to be addressed, and I'm the first to recognize that percentage of an increase on customers, that's significant, and unfortunately I don't have any other answer or any positive thing to say other than it's something for you to be able to pay your bills and keep water. My recommendation is the town needs to take that. And I'll be glad to answer any specific question I can, but I want you to kind of get a sense of the pretty bad situation your water utility is in. And some of you may not be aware of that, but I know the mayor is aware because we presented this stuff to her and she's seen it. And they also see when they pay the bills, there's more goes out than it's coming in, and that's what's happening with your water utility.
Now, are you talking about our water as it is right now?
Right now.
Okay, now, you're aware that they want us to hook into Westernport's water?
Yes.
But Westernport doesn't, that they want to charge us, I think the last number we got, she can give you $3.45 a thousand or something.
$1.05 per thousand. $1.05 per thousand.
That was unfinished water, which they said they wouldn't tell us.
No, that's potable water. It was gonna be 50 cents for raw water, but then they refused to give us raw water.
That's not the number Ben gave
What's the
us.
number?
No, we said we was trying to get him to give us a short-term contract, and if we shortened the contract, it would go up to $3 and something.
Well, I'm not gonna
But
argue
right
with you,
now,
but we
it's
sit over in
$1,
another meeting.
yeah, $1.05. But Ben said we are trying to talk them down from a 40-year contract down to like a 5-year contract, and they said it would automatically go up to $3 and something if we took short term. But right now, it's $1.05 per thousand.
Plus $25 fee,
Huh?
plus $25 fee.
Yeah.
So that's for portable water.
Yeah,
That goes
But
all
they-
on.
so really another $28.
But the $25, that was a huge concern that we had immediately. But $25 was, you're treated as one customer, not multiple
Well,
customers.
see, Maryland pays a bay fee, and they pay a trunk line surcharge.
That's what I understand.
Yeah, well, they're sure not gonna pay that in Westernport and not let us not pay it.
Well, I mean, but you will pay $25, but it's not 25 for every customer. That was my initial concern.
It is over there.
I know, but you're gonna be one customer
We are
there.
one customer with them.
And we were worried about that. We talked to our Public Service Commission, and that was a big concern of theirs.
Okay, and you're saying that was only be
That was
$125?
That's what I was told by the West Virginia PSC representatives that met with Maryland to clarify, because $25 per customer, that's $25 more a month, that doesn't work. I mean, and that's what they tell us.
If I lived in Westernport and I had to pay that $25 fee and you didn't, I think I'd have a complaint about that. And they're gonna catch some flack over that, and they're gonna get some friends.
Well, they're gonna get $25, but,
Yeah, but I mean-
we're just gonna be one bill for
I
them.
understand, what I'm saying, over there, everybody pays.
Yeah, but
Every household.
they get, their meters, transmission, all the work that they're doing, that's part of the $25 fee. They're not gonna come over here and work on your lines, or they're just gonna sell water and you're gonna pay water and pay one water bill back to them. It's not, they're not gonna be serving all your
Well,
customers.
maybe, that's for the Chesapeake Bay. They don't do nothing for that, they just have to pay it. And the trunk line fee, the trunk line's already been laid. I mean, there's no maintenance to that, that's a brand new line. So they're gonna pay that $25 per household. And the people right across the bridge drinking the same water out of the same line, and you don't have to pay it. If I lived in Westernport, I believe I'd have a complaint about that. And they're gonna catch some flack over that, I'm sure they will.
But they may do that, but I think we need to understand that Piedmont will be paying a $25 fee because Piedmont will be Westernport's customer.
I understand.
Not you, not anybody in the room, because you'll still be Piedmont's customer. So Piedmont will pay a $25 fee.
Monthly?
Yes,
I know what you're talking about, $25 monthly,
one
that
that
the town pays
This
for
is
the
the town.
individual resident does not have to pay. And you're right, they're gonna catch flack on
You know, I'm guaranteeing they are.
But they're doing the same thing for Luke. Luke is one customer to Western.
No.
I've talked to their mayor, I've talked to Luke's mayor.
they pay one.
It's gonna be one
Well, yeah,
meter.
it's not there yet. They're in the same
When they're
position
done.
we're in.
Well, that's, because that was a huge concern that when we first saw that proposal, I read it like you're thinking. That was, I didn't know how that was gonna work, cause that's $25 more per customer. And that's just.
If that's just one for Piedmont only,
If
then
it's
I don't
one,
have a problem.
$25,
Yeah.
I understand if every customer that's got a meter that's buying water from Westport pays $25 and they impose it on Piedmont, one $25 fee,
Yeah.
that's hard to argue. I mean, it's not that unreasonable, but that is a huge concern. And when we were arguing on behalf of Piedmont down in Charleston at the Infrastructure Council, some of the first times we made an argument, we were under the understanding that it was 25 per customer. That we were arguing that we don't want anything to do with that. That doesn't work. The PSC, that's when they got involved. Our West Virginia PSC, and they contacted Maryland PSC, and then they did some research, and that's when they came back and told all of us that Piedmont would only be subject to one $25 a month fee. Well, that changes everything. That's a lot more workable than what they were.
Well, that would be put in a contract then, so that they can't come along next year and say, well, we want everybody to pay it. They can't do that, I mean.
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I just know, of course, we'd have to fight about it. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd have to fight about it if we had to do something like that.
Well, that's why we can get our own water lines running wherever we have a run.
Did we run any projections based on that rate? What effect it would have on Piedmont?
We ran some initial projections. When I first saw the $25, I didn't run much because I already know that didn't work.
Yeah.
But until we got a determination of what's the Infrastructure Council want to put on us, we haven't run a lot. The initial thought was at the $1.05 when I looked at that and how much water I thought you would have, that was something that was more workable than for you to do something with treatment, even if they gave us 100% grant, which they wouldn't have. But we haven't taken that next step yet because really the folks in funding and regulatory agencies, until we resolve where you are, they kind of tabled everything to see if you're going to be financially viable. Right now, in their eyes, we're not financially viable. I didn't know if you got the sense of that in the discussion, but they were waiting to see, is Piedmont going to take care of where they are today, and then we will deal with the source issue, the project issue. I don't know, Fred, I know is that your sense?
Yes.
That's what they're waiting on?
Yes.
Did they approve today the emergency money?
Yes.
Good, all right, that's good. But no, to answer your question, I haven't run anything very specific about it because we have to get through this hump and then see how they're going to fund it. And I know Terry's been working like crazy on the behalf of Piedmont for the best funding we can get, the best deal we can get from the agencies. But it's not a pleasant situation with the rates you have to deal with, or this issue of imminent loss of water. That's something that I think everybody's been made well aware of, and we're getting some assistance and positive responses back from, I think, the folks and the agency heads and stuff, because this situation wasn't, you know, Piedmont didn't cause this, it's been thrust upon us, but we're still working through it, so.
So in reality, we're gonna pay our bills based on the new rates to the town of Piedmont. You guys are then either gonna be paying Westernport what we owe them per gallon, right?
Right.
So no matter what the engineering projects are, whether it's water from Piedmont Dam, whether it's water from Westernport, this isn't gonna change.
No.
These rates are gonna be what they are, and then the rest of it's for you to handle. Okay?
We're getting our water for free now. I mean, how can you say that it's not gonna change if we hook into Westernport, they're gonna charge us? They're gonna charge us for the water, so we're gonna have to pay them, and now this 56% increase, if we gotta pay Westernport, we still have to maintain that depreciation fund you're talking about. That's gotta, then the bill's gonna have to go up again.
It may have to go up, I'm not saying it won't, but you do have costs that you're facing now, that if you buy finished water,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't have those. So we'll have to look at what reductions we would have in cost and what increases we would have because of buying water at $1. You know, that, we haven't gone there, but yes, if the costs are more when you take out that change, then we'd be back, we have to have more rates. I mean, there's no way around it, that's not sugarcoating it, that's just what I said.
But do we have a cost per 1,000 gallons to treat water? What it's costing us now?
No, we haven't gone down for that.
Now, if we get these new rates, my water bill at my home's gonna be over $200 a month. I paid $143 one month, the next month it's $148, this time it was $138. What used to happen, we always had a big garden, and in the summertime, my bill went like that, $150, $160, I didn't care. We hosed, I used to have a lot of flowers. Last year, I cut all that out, and it would go down, it used to get down to $90 in the winter. Well, I thought that was pretty fair. Now, there's no rates on, new rates on it, there hasn't been. It was $148. And I had them up to read the meters. There's 3 different guys come up 3 different times in a week. The meter's fine. So what's going on there?
It sounds like that sounds like more than a rate issue. I mean, that sounds like, almost like you've got a leak on your
We
side.
don't have no leak. No, we checked commodes, had the plumber there, everybody, like I said, when the guys read the meter, I had Eric stop and look. I think Ernie was up one time. They said there's nothing. Well, something's doing that.
Remember, bill's $58.59, yours should be getting much.
Yeah, now with this, it's gonna be over $200 a month. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm
Did you
sure.
get one of the new meters?
I think we need a new meter.
What,
Get that one out there and go from a new one, and see what it comes up with.
Is that's still an old meter you got?
No, I think it's one of the new ones.
All meters were replaced back there when they did what the water.
No, they just put,
Well, no,
they
they
just put
just-
different ones in, cause I just got one.
Yeah, they just Duck got one, and
Well, they have.
My bill is $200.
he's got an issue with the new meter, and there might be some other issues.
$252.
when did it usually run?
33, like 98 to 100 and something dollars.
Yeah, see, that's what I
It's
said.
done.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Mine in the wintertime used to go down to $90.
Is that water bill or is that?
Water
your-
and
My
sewer
water.
together,
Okay, okay.
everything.
Okay,
But that's still high.
Okay.
okay. I
That's
thought you were just
still
talking
high.
I
water.
thought you was talking
I
water.
normally use between 3,000 and 3,800 gallons. Last month it went to 8,000 gallons, this month it went to 15,000.
And he's my
Off this
neighbor.
new meter.
He's my neighbor, so he's having a problem like us.
You know,
And I don't have no leak either, that's what they say I did.
I told them that this town has three type of people. They got low income, fixed income, and no income. And the last time we had a meeting over in the city building, the past due water account bills were laying on the counter, and I looked at them, and there was 8 pages of past due water accounts there. So if we get a raise like this, you're gonna have a lot more of them, and you're gonna be shutting water off all the time.
And like I said, well, in the wintertime, that bill always went down to about $90. And I thought, well, that's fair. My son worked steady last shift, he's not even in the house at nighttime. And that's crazy. We never had no garden last year on account of that. Like I said, I like flowers and I didn't hardly put any last year. And that bill still stayed like that. So I still say there's something wrong, but they've been you call them, they come, they're real good about coming and checking it. But he's my neighbor, so he's having a problem too. So you wonder along there, what's going on.
And we say we can't afford these rates, and obviously it's gonna happen anyway. What are the people gonna do? They can't pay their water bill. They're gonna be shut off, and I know a lot of people are moving out. I would, if I could get what I put in my house, I'd be gone, but that's not gonna happen.
We got a fortune on the inside, we never get on
Yeah,
it.
No, I'm not moving.
Does the
I
city
guess I just have to pay the
have
water
a
bill
detailed
and have to-
expense, income and expense breakdown for what they're basing this rate on?
Yeah, they report annually to PSC that breaks down their operation maintenance costs, where it was, and of course, it's public, you're about to see the detail that goes behind it.
Do they have anything available to present tonight?
No, the detail behind it?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't, mine's in summary form at this point, but that's something you're not to say.
What you referred to, what figures you looked at relating to base this rate increase, did you look at any other years since the last raise? Because the last raise was a very nominal raise. I think it went from, the basic went from $26 to 27 something. And
How
it's
many
not
years
been
ago
that
was
long ago,
14.
maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
No, I didn't go back. What we typically do is we take the most recent base year where we have detailed information on, and we base everything on that. In this case, since your PSC report for 19 was recently filed, also wanted to look and say, because I was really looking for a way, okay, well, maybe 18 was a little bit high in the expenses. I was looking for a way to, maybe I could cut it back, but 19, you're very steady as far as the cost of by line item look pretty similar. So that's appears to be where you're, at least for 2-year period that we looked at.
So this is available through PSC.
PSC reports are available, and you know what they pay when they pay their bills is available if you talk with the mayor.
Also, what income that you showed in the past audit that you did on the water account, did that include arrearages?
No, that is actual bill. Actual bill. We look at what the billed customers for that particular period should have been billed and what they were billed. We look to see that if, based on the usages, if they're billing correctly, which they were, as far as what the current rates are. And then we project, okay, if you have an increase of this, we'll generate so much more dollars that we'll pay the O&M that we need to do. That's typically how we do it. And this was originally part of, also part of our filings with the State Infrastructure Council, where we file on behalf of Piedmont our financial condition, and really we use it as a basis. We can't afford to borrow money. We went for grant dollars because of exactly what we're talking about. So, but that's what we used.
So what you're saying, the income figure that you quoted for the last audit you did, that is the actual income, but not the
That's bill.
anticipated.
Those are bill revenues, yes.
So they've never really took that much money.
Yes, there is an uncollectible piece down in expenses, less than 0.5% we use. And their actual cash flow, there have been some spikes, but it's not anything I see out of the ordinary as far as, you know, the collection issues because of the, you know, they'll terminate water if they need to, if people will pay the bill.
Because I know that the sheet he was referring to, we seen for the delinquent bills.
That
Several
brings
on
up
there.
a question I wanna ask you.
Okay?
In Westernport, they put it up on the wall. Is that legal in West Virginia to put past dues up there so everybody in the world can see?
I mean, yeah, I mean. if
They
it's-
call it what, the dwarf shame over there?
It's,
Yeah.
public information.
They did put it on
We
the
know
wall.
that's great. That's,
Yeah, there's nothing.
We could do that, and not get in trouble.
I
think if you leave yourself open to a lawsuit.
It's public record.
You
isn't it?
can't put any, like, personal information,
Yeah, you can put like a social security number.
No,
or
no,
anything
just
like that.
But
name,
a
residence, and how much
customer
you have.
name and an amount owed. I've seen other municipalities do similar things with non-payment of other fees and taxes.
But what if they don't have the money to pay? That sheriff's not gonna bring the money in. I mean, you know,
Some of it's not
I don't
shame,
see
it's
what
just they
good
don't pay.
would it do you? I mean, you have a regulation over, if somebody don't pay the water bill in a certain amount of time, you cut the water off anyway. I mean, is there anything you're gonna do then is embarrass them a little bit more? I mean, like I said, you got low income and fixed income people in this town. If you wanna punish them, I think you're already punishing them with this increase.
Actually, how many people over there look at delinquent list, it ain't the low income people it's doing it, it's
Not all
people
of
that
them
just
are,
don't wanna
but
pay.
there's a lot of them that are.
Yeah.
I looked at that list.
Does your
I'll get on,
audit reveal,
look
or
at
do
it.
you even look
I'll
at what
look at it.
attempts the city has made to
Most of the
collect
senior
delinquent
citizens
bills?
are right there.
I'll tell you what, I had that list when I filed a grievance with the Public Service Commission back years ago, and I told them lawyers about that list, and they told me I better keep my mouth shut that I didn't see that list. Now, that's what the lawyers told me, from the PSC. They told me I shouldn't have seen that list. Tony Francis was the mayor, he gave it to me, because I told him it was public information, which he did give to me, but then them lawyers said I shouldn't have had it.
That's why I asked.
But now,
Yeah, that's
Maryland's
not,
different,
that's
so.
not, I mean, I can tell you, there are 12 different exemptions under FOIA, and the fact that information might be embarrassing to someone is not an exemption under FOIA.
He had a question about if I'd looked at your collection efforts and that kind of stuff. Not to a great extent, because I do know that the number one collection effort that you can make is terminate service. And they were terminating service. My recommendation would always be to exactly follow the Public Service Commission guidelines and when they say dates and those kind of things. I know many of my clients, many of my municipalities, they tend to want to give even more than that, like, someone has a hardship story, even though it sounds hard. My recommendation is to follow to the letter, no matter what, and then, then all are treated the same. And I know there's always the thought of bending something to let someone come pay next month or something, but if you do that, that also opens up the possibility that they'll run up a bigger bill, and then you terminate and you've lost. But I didn't pursue any much more than that, no, sir.
That's the reason I asked you a question, because as the mayor spoke, there are a lot of people on that list is not low income people, but it's people that has the ability to pay it.
They just don't.
No actions are being taken for them people to pay those bills.
Well, the one I would recommend that you follow that exactly, terminate service, and follow the rules exactly. There are provisions for someone, if they do get terminated, if they want to come in and make a payment plan, you're required to offer one, and they have to sign that they'll pay their current bill, so much toward their prior bill. They sign the document and agree to it. If they don't adhere to it, you terminate them, and then you're there. Beyond that, if you do terminate someone and there's still a balance owed, you can file liens against, them. But also, one of the biggest protections for you for collection is if someone goes to termination, before they are put back on, they have to pay past due charges, any other fees that are in your tariff, and a security deposit. So you pay the security deposit again, because the security deposit is refunded to a customer. If they've made 12 on-time consecutive payments, then they get their security deposit back. That's the way the law works and the PSC rules work. However, once someone gets terminated, they're no longer a current customer, they're coming on, they have to pay the security deposit again. That is probably the one where I haven't seen, I didn't look back specifically for that, but I would definitely recommend it. And that's not mistreating, that's what the law is, and it is a security deposit, and if someone pays 12 consecutive on-time payments, they get it back with whatever little interest the PSC tells you every year. But, so I would recommend that too.
But there's a way around that.
See,
we get that water
under
under somebody else's name.
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
There's a way around that. We got community care where they get their water under somebody else's name, they said it's moved into that property. So they just charge them, the water gets turned back on.
Now you gotta get it to the resident.
Yeah.
Itself, the bill for them, so.
Well, there are some people that do that. If the office were to be able to find out that there was someone trying to do that, they could refuse service, they could make an application, and the PSC will ultimately probably decide it. But you are right, that is one of the things that I see of people circumventing a rule.
You're talking about they have to maintain so much money. Is that everything that comes into the town, like for the traffic tickets and the ordinances and everything? Or it's
Just
water? There's a separate fund?
Yes.
Or, okay.
See, that's basically all Piedmont has for income is for water and sewage. So we're running the whole town off the water and sewage account.
Well, actually, what you're paying out of water, when the invoices I looked at, I didn't see other things that should have been in there.
Well, what else do we have?
Well, I mean, I didn't see, as far as expenses,
Yeah, I'm
like,
saying-
I didn't see snow removal or that kind of, stuff that's obviously. I didn't see any of that.
I'll say they'll be doing it, don't they?
Yeah, but I didn't see that water was paying it though.
Yeah.
I will say
I'm
that.
saying, what else do we get?
I don't know, I didn't look at the
I
other.
mean, we get a little bit from the business revenue, we get a little bit from the lottery, we get a little bit from coal showers. I think we get some from the windmill.
Get any from the mill
Even
now?
all that together,
And the property tax.
I didn't see any of those come out of water.
you
I
can't
didn't
see
look.
that way.
The only thing that comes out of the water is, like Ernie's salary, works the water plant, Eric's works the water plant.
That's all I saw.
Well, that's what it said, that we don't have anything else.
Nothing comes out of water to water. You shouldn't use the water for anything else. It always goes into water. There's money that goes into water.
See, we used to have a garbage service, but they give it away.
I know what I'm here for is to raise itself in the town of Piedmont, which the people can't afford it. You have 7 churches here and you only have 4 or 5 there. There goes our churches. They won't be able to stay open. And there are places that the business we have here is gonna close up. There goes the town dead more than what it was. And the town of Piedmont didn't ever have anything to do with it in the beginning. The mill and our congressmen and all them had to did Piedmont the way it is today. And we're gonna suffer.
We keep saying
Well, what
we
they
can't
did.
afford it, and they say, well, we're raising
And
it
it don't make
anyway.
no sense to me to keep raising something to run people out and dead the town. That's all it's doing.
Is there any other options, Skip?
I got any options?
Any other options?
I got options is, we
Unincorporated.
should have went back to the state of Maryland and the state of West Virginia and cleared this up a long time ago. They're the ones that made the water, shut the water off in the beginning. Here's where the problem started. State of Maryland and state of
It
West
started
Virginia.
with the paper bill.
When they had that coyote thing up there, whatever they had up there.
For all the town ain't any different from your house. You have bills you have to pay, you have so much money coming in. Well, if you got more bills, and you got money coming in, you got to make adjustments, right? I don't think the town's any different. Well, I think that's what we got to look at. I think the town needs to look and see what kind of adjustments we make.
The water rates one of the adjustments we
I got
got.
an alternative.
Huh?
I got an alternative, people ain't gonna like it.
But what
Just
what
gonna have
other
to
choices?
come back on the board.
That's what I'm asking, what other choices?
Cut
Anybody got
back on employees.
any ideas, or anybody got any?
You're
What other options do we have?
You got 3 people read water meters. Why do you have 3 people reading water meters?
Joe
You
Yeager
only
did this when they had 2,500 people by himself, and he was an old man, and he took every lid off, and actually read the meter and recorded it. One man did that every month. I see 3 people with electronic reader walking by, 3.
Yep.
And nobody can tell me that ain't so, because I watched it.
You got 2 clerks over there, and I know what the state auditors recommend, but that's only an agreed upon recommendations. That's not law. Cut back on the hours.
Said you just gotta do what you gotta
5
do.
hours a day.
You can do that. Like I said, Carrie's only part.
Hey, it's hard decisions, but
Nothing against none of them, but.
No,
Yeah,
it's
Carrie,
not- it's
we're
nothing
going
against
down.
them. Just gotta cut. I mean, if you
hey,
don't
what
have
did
to
they
get
do
it
when
on,
they don't have to work? They
that's
furloughed people. That's what they did. I mean, I don't want to see anybody get furloughed. I don't want to see anybody lose either. But if that's what you gotta do to be, you know,
Solvent,
keep your head above water, that's what you gotta do. You gotta run this town like you do your home, or just like you would a business. If they don't make money, then
Just like the man said, you look at this raise, and now possibly another raise later on. People can't afford this raise.
I know, and like I said, we inherited this. You was in there at one time.
understand.
Did you not do anything about it?
What's that?
When you were in, did you try to do anything about it?
We didn't have to.
You didn't.
We had our own
You
water
couldn't have
line.
got us off,
We
West
had
Waco
our own water line, and we had garbage, we
We
had our
don't-
own water
Was you
line.
on, we on West Waco water then?
No,
Who put us on West
we
Waco?
went on West
Every
Waco
time
water
we
in
was on West Waco
2009.
water was when the flood washed out part of the line, sad.
Right,
And we went up, replaced all that line.
that's been fixed. We even laid new line down 135.
So how
We
long
went
has it
on
been
West Waco water
water?
in 2009, and for the town and the employees all, it was convenient to get free water,
Right.
and they didn't worry about our water line, and that's why we're right here today
Right.
doing what we're doing. Or we would have a water line flowing down here, Savage, going to our reservoir.
Like I said, when I tried to get the raw water from Westernport, they told us the only reason we couldn't get it was because 10 years ago, we refused and wanted to tap it.
We didn't need it, like I told you.
We didn't need it.
We bought our own
We had
water.
our own water. We didn't need their
We
water.
didn't need their water.
I'll tell you something about Western.
No, we don't either.
And
We don't need Western Port
I know they're
water.
not forcing
I'm
us to go
convinced
on
that we
their
do not
water,
need
but
Western
they're
Port
in bad
water. We
shape
have
over
a
there
water line.
too. My sister's house is for sale, and there's at least 6 empty houses around her. I can take anybody up there and show them right now. So if they get us, his water customers, hey,
How they
we're
gonna do
paying
that? I know.
for it's leaving.
Now, I'll tell you
I
something.
don't want it either.
Let me tell you
Got
what
a
I
water
did.
line
I
that's
went
fixed.
online. And you know, you got your Piedmont archives on the Potomac State College. And I went online. If you look for July the 20th, 1960 issue, Don Mauer, who was the mayor then, he signed a contract with the mill where the mill would take care of our water line from Savage to the west end of Piedmont Hill. Now, I don't know if that's still legal, but I know if you buy a piece of property and there's a lien on it, you take the lien with it, don't you? You get everything that goes with that piece of property, and like I said, maybe it's changed hands, is that still viable, where they would have to maintain our water line coming down?
Who's got the contract?
Well, like I said, it was put down on legal,
That would
they
explain-
do legal papers up and everything
Wouldn't
for
be in
that.
the courthouse.
Read your July the 20th, 1960 issue, front page.
That would explain why the mill took care of our pumps and the water line that went across the Old Iron Bridge. They always took care of that. Of course, they had, as a result of that, they had fire monitors in the Savage Woods Yard to mark our raw water line. They had raw water at the clarifier.
And they had a
They had
whole
fire service at Piedmont Receiving. So they
And 6 and
had
7,
advantage
and
to
6
using
and
that
7, they
line.
had a
That's
fire
what I'm
line.
saying, is there contracts for that anywhere? Is there contracts for that anywhere?
There was
Well, the
legal
city
papers
should have a
drawn
copy
up.
of it.
Don Mauer had it there that they would have contract filled out and signed between the mill and the
Well,
city of
who was
Piedmont.
the mill that, what was the name of the mill then?
What's that?
So you're saying the mill should still be responsible for the water line?
I don't know, like I said, you buy a piece of property, it's got a lien on it, do you owe the lien? You bet your butt you do. Well, they bought that property up there and that contractor's with all that, do they own it? I don't know.
It was legal.
You'd have to ask a lawyer that, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know they drew that up.
You know anything about that, Terry?
No, I don't. I don't know anything about it, and I'm gonna probably tick half of you off, but it's I'm going to tell you what I think is the truth, and I don't like it. I despise it, and sometimes you just gotta stand back and look at the problem you have and fix it. And, you know, sometimes it hurts a little bit when you fix it, but it keeps you from maybe cutting off the end of the finger may help you from cutting off your whole arm. Like you say, Piedmont is smaller. It's lost people. So even if you did go up and still got water to your water plant, your bills are going to keep going up. Your power's going to keep going up. Your chemicals will keep going up. Your employees' wages are going to keep going up. And like you say, to be able to run your house, you got to be able to pay your bills. Pay those bills, you got to raise your water rates. That's coming, whether you like it or not. I don't like it because I got to pay mine in Petersburg. Got to do the same thing. TV rates, power rates, gas rates, car rates, whatever, insurance rates, whatever. And it's at times you got to sit down and look at the economics of it. Is it smarter to run a plant that is costing more than it is to buy the product off of somebody else, or not? Now, if you want to be your own show and run your own plant and operate it yourself, you got to be ready to pay the higher power plant, the higher power bills, the higher chemical bills, the higher wages, everything that goes right along with living. Now, if you take and you join in with other customers in other places, whether it's Maryland, California, or wherever, it don't matter. You got more people. You spread that cost out around more people. That helps you some on being able to absorb the cost. And it don't hurt the bank. You don't have to pay as much per customer. But if it's just me and Fred running our own water plant, me and Fred's going to pay somebody full time and pay for all the chemicals and all the power plant, and we got two people to divide it up against. Me and him. If it's 250 households in Piedmont running the water plant, you got to pay for everything but 250 households. Now, if it's 1,000 households or 500 or whatever, you got to run a little bit bigger plant, but you got 3 times as many households to pay it. I don't like it. I hated when that mill shut down, made me sick to my stomach. I've lived in there for 30 years now, and I feel like it's home. I've been in Piedmont. I know Frida, Miss Brace, wherever she's at. I know Miss Ann Russo. I know all y'all. And I know you're independent, smart, and you want what's best for Piedmont. I know that. But at times you got to sit back and look and think, what do we really do? I mean, sometimes we got to do something we don't like. But if we got to do it, let's figure out and do it the best way we can, so it hurts the least. If we don't do it, we'll end up losing water come October. And we're not gonna have any grants to get water anywhere else because their masters done said, them people in Piedmont's crazy, we ain't going. And they're gonna walk away.
Can I make a couple comments?
Wait a minute,
All right, when you're finished, I'd like to.
In a minute, sir. And then we're going to, you know, you're gonna be at a point where you're forced to fix it yourself. And I think now that you get your financial house in order now, we have applications in to receive enough grant money to get you hooked into Westernport on the next phase. Friends, that, and with no loan, no borrowing loan. So that would, now, there may be an increase with whatever the cost of the Westernport water is going to be. That's Mr. Swanson down there. You talk to him about that. He'll be negotiating that. But the thing is that it's going to hurt, and we just got to figure out the best way to do it. And I don't know, you know, that's all I can say, and this is the best way that I know to do it. And before you do anything, you have to get your financial house in order now and be able to pay your current bills, or you're going to lose what you got now. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. There are a few things, a lot of questions that come up with that. One big one is, one of the reasons that we're losing so much money on our water plant is that we're now figuring in the depreciation of the water plant, which is another cost that we have to take care of and account for. One amount we're not figuring in is the value of our Savage Water raw water source. That has a value to it. It has, having a water line to your own free water source is worth money. That's probably worth millions of dollars, it could be. We're not counting the value of giving that away. That's something that it's a cost. It's going to be a permanent future cost for us that we'll never have our free water again. You add that up over time, that's a very large cost that's being ignored in this project. A couple other things are the Savage River water line is being, the costs for it have been, I think, exaggerated, partly just by the project itself being declared as being a 7-mile water line. The Savage River water line is 5 miles long, and all these figures are based on it being 7 miles long. There's no way that it's more than 5 miles long. I have maps to show it. If you want a copy of that, I can show you. You can actually drive up to where the dam is. Drive down and check it on your car. It's not 7 miles. That makes a big difference in the cost of that project. So between the cost of, another thing that was mentioned was the date that we're going to lose our water as being October 2020. That's been told to us several times now in public. In the preliminary engineering report that was put out, there's a schedule, a project schedule. And they're not even awarding a construction contract until January of 2021. So if we're losing our water of October 2020, we're not going to have water for quite a while before they finish this project. The complete construction date is August of 2021. So somehow we're getting water for another 10 months or so after what you're telling us. So we have at least 10 more months than we've been told to figure this out. And we still think the Savage water line is the best choice for Piedmont. That our demand is shrinking. It costs a lot to run a water plant, but there are a lot of new ways that small communities are treating their water. There are things called packaged water plants, where you get a pre-built water plant. It's just a filtration system. It's reverse osmosis and carbon filtration and that sort of filter. For a small base of water customers, that's a very viable option. And those can be constructed for a reasonable amount of money, flown in on a helicopter, dropped in place, and you're good to go. That's what a lot of small communities are doing for water plants. Another option is treating the water at each individual person's home, where you have the water plant treat it to some standard, but then we have reverse osmosis system in everyone's home. It's only 260 places that would need to be installed. These are all things that have been proposed for small towns. We're not the only small town in this country. In fact, there's something like 60% of the towns in this country are going through this problem right now.
What kind of cost, Eddie?
And what kind of cost of the packaged water plant?
Yeah.
It depends on what we need. We'd have to really look into those costs for how many customers we have, and what type of water we have. They design the plants to exactly what your water is. It only treats, ours would treat pH and biological stuff, obviously, but whatever else it needed, if there's a unusual problem. Some places have radon, we have to test it, check for that. I don't think we have that here. Anyway, that's an option, but I just think we shouldn't go away from the Savage River water so quickly. It's going to cost us a lot. And if we had that water source, we'd be able to sell water to commercial customers. But I don't think Westernport is going to allow us, as a commercial customer, if we got someone to come in here that was going to use a lot of water, say a bottling plant, a brewery or something, that wanted 100,000 gallons a day, I don't think Westernport would be able to accommodate that. We'd want to be able to do that ourselves. So I think there's a lot to be looked at in this. And the expenses of the water plant, I think the numbers of those, I looked through the Rule 42 documents for that, and it looks like they're very incomplete numbers, I think. I really would like this looked at a lot harder, and it just seems like the majority of it is the depreciation, like you said, and the depreciation makes all of our small towns look like we're losing money on the water plant. Yeah, we still, and that's my last point is that when we get this potable water from Westernport, it's coming from Maryland. It's not guaranteed to meet West Virginia standards. We still need a West Virginia water treatment operator to guarantee that water is safe for our residents. I don't think that they allow an out-of-state, another state with different set of standards to certify water for West Virginia. And that's something the legal department can check. But we will still need to treat the water at least for at least chlorine, and it'll have to still be tested. And we still will have to have someone like Bernie, who's a water treatment operator. He's not here to talk about that, but he has mentioned it. So I think before we race ahead into this Westernport connection, we should give the Savage a fair chance. Their earnings also looked at the water line. There's water flowing right now at the Woodyard, which means 3.75 miles of the water line is working. And it may be leaking a lot, but we're only asking it to provide maybe 25% of the capacity that it was designed for. Because we had 260 water taps. At one time we had 1,500 water taps or something like that. And so that Savage line was supplying all of those. So even if it's leaking 75% of its water, it'd probably be plenty for us in its current condition. So we could do a project where we're not replacing 7 miles of water line. That's a given. The alternative for Savage says replace existing 7-mile raw water line. There's so many things wrong with that. We really need to look at that again. If we replaced only 2 miles of water line, and we didn't have to do the river crossing directional drilling, because we don't have to with our water line. There's no place where we have to go under the river. We have the bridge. The total project cost with contingency is a little over $1 million. It's one of the cheaper alternatives. So we want to, as the citizens who are the ones who are the ultimate, your ultimate boss of our government, we're saying that we want this option explored thoroughly, and our Savage River water line tested where it is now, and thoroughly explored and surveyed. Obviously, it wasn't surveyed if they said it was 7 miles long. Nobody's even looked at it. I doubt anyone needs to look to see the water is flowing in it. We were told over and over that there was no water in there, no water in there. When finally Ernie went up there, there's water in there. And so there was one other option. A big problem was a lot of the costs are coming from our leakage. And a lot of leakage comes from the pool. And we could easily create a water source for the pool from the Potomac and treat that water separately and not be using our potable water to fill our swimming pool. Between those couple things, we might be able to get our water plant profitable without such a huge rate increase. We still probably have a rate increase. I don't think anyone denies that, but I don't think we need as large a rate increase. So So there's just a lot of other things we'd like to see studied. That's it for now.
Fred, can you step in?
Thanks.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Who's gonna guarantee me water past October 2020?
Somebody's guaranteeing it to us because it's in their schedule.
No, not somebody, because, no disrespect.
Yeah.
I'm in contact with the mill all the time for obvious reasons. And when they agreed to pay the last, 13% of the grant Westernport's getting, the trade-off is that project's gonna be done June of 2020. Their contract is gonna end 3 months earlier. That's my concern. I know we say we can guarantee, I wanna know who's gonna guarantee me water come June of next year.
That's what we need to ask these people, but we don't know that. But they're telling us by their construction schedule that we're gonna need water till August 2021 for their project to be done. So somebody's.
It's not supposed to, it's not even supposed to start till February 21.
Yeah.
I think the courts are gonna guarantee you water.
So somebody's already figured out we have
Let
water
Fred talk,
supply.
guys.
They've been a utility supplier for so long now that there's not a court in this country.
First off, it ain't gonna be the mill. It ain't gonna be the mill. It might be off the Westernport line, because the question is the mill gonna continue granting us easement through their property?
See how they can
You know,
reduce it.
that's what I say, I don't know. I don't know the legal
I don't think
answer
they
to
can
that.
take it off of you.
Okay,
I
let
can
Fred
just tell-
talk, he can answer some of these questions.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I'll start first with the condition of that line. As far as what we reported in there, when we spoke to the town, what information was available, and we spoke to the health department, that was the information that the health department had, that is what was here. And a couple of things that I can tell you personally, having gone through the mill and where that line is, regardless of what the length of that line is, the way that the line currently snakes through the mill is absolutely untenable. There is a pipeline there. It is currently in one piece, but that is about the extent of it. The line is cast iron. It's very, very old. It's very fragile. It crosses the railroad tracks that belong to CSX, even the sidings within the mill, without benefit of steel casing. It sits sometimes within 10 feet of the ties on each side. The repairs that the town have had to make to that line are dangerous. The idea of continuing to use that in the future, particularly if that mill changes hands, is something we would never recommend, because maintenance on it is very difficult. At some point, the CSX is going to likely require that the utility crossings under their tracks be brought up to their standards, because you cross under the railroad tracks on an easement, and that is completely at the discretion of the railroad. The same thing you talked about the bridge. That bridge belongs to Verso. That's not a DOH bridge, that belongs to Verso, and they have made it abundantly clear in meetings that we've had with the town that they want the water line off the bridge, and they will force that issue if they have to, because that presents a long-term liability to them. So that in itself is difficult. As far as the water plant goes and as far as the water source goes, the reservoir that Westernport pulls out of was designed from the get-go with one of its purposes being to provide that raw water, and they've got an accommodation for that. Your reservoir, from talking to the health department and what we've seen of the information, is in poor shape. Our experience with small reservoirs is abysmal, simply because you have to keep them up. They have to be dredged periodically. There's a lot of maintenance to that. As far as crossing the river, I think, as I said in the meetings we've had with Verso, they have made it abundantly clear that that water line is coming off that bridge. And in my understanding, Terry, you were in some of those meetings, what they would like to do is actually remove the bridge. Because that presents a long-term liability to them that is non-sustainable in their eyes. As far as the treatment plant goes, package plants we use quite often. There really isn't anything wrong with the filter elements of your treatment plant, but there are about, I don't know what I had in here, there is over $1 million worth of work that needs to be done to that plant to upgrade it.
Just to put $3 million in it. Put $3 million in it.
Yeah, the water plant improvements, just the construction cost is $925,000 to meet current shortcomings that are there at the plant. It could be replaced, but you're talking about probably 2 or 3 times that cost, even with a package unit. The biggest single thing that you have up there in terms of treatment is sediment, is the water or the dirt that's suspended in the water. It typically is not chemically related. You do adjust for pH, you do adjust for, or you do add chlorine for disinfection. Typically, fluoride is added. There's also at times some powdered carbon to take care of taste and odor. But the principal thing that is taken out are sediments. There's big settling tanks that have to go ahead of the treatment units. You have those, but there's work that needs to be done to refurbish those. With the last upgrade, for whatever reason, there were a number of items that weren't addressed. As far as the sale for resale, even if you did have a 100,000 gallon a day customer, the amount of water coming in here from Westernport should be more than adequate for that. And you are authorized, I think, Todd, to serve customers that come into town. As far as the schedule goes, the schedule that we prepared as part of that preliminary engineering report is a long one by design, because the way that the funding occurs, there are penalties for missing schedules. So when we prepare these for any project, not just the Piedmont one, we're going to be very, very conservative with how long it's going to take to put that out. Now, my understanding of talking with the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission has been very, very active in dealing directly with Verso as well as Westernport, is that the water treatment facility there at the plant is going to be maintained, because Luke is in the same position that you all are. And my understanding is Verso is not going to be able to walk away from the water plant operations until these 2 water system issues are taken care of. And Luke's is going to be in more or less at the same time frame that we're talking about for Piedmont's. So the 2 are tied together, and I think hard dates are probably not as hard as they would seem. It is a guarantee that at some point in the not terribly distant future that Verso is going to shut that water treatment plant down. And there's going to be accommodations made to serve both Luke and Piedmont. So the exact dates to those are kind of fluid at this point. They're not completely precise. But as far as maintaining your own system, particularly with that water system, the expenses involved in driving that pipe, or a pipe, either around the mill or through the mill, are very substantial, because the rules that were in place when that pipe was put in don't match what's there today. As far as the leaks in the pipe and whatnot, if you've got leaking pipe, it is only a matter of time before you're going to have to fix that. I agree with what you're saying relative to how much water was used at one time versus what's here now. But if you've got pipe that's leaking, if you've got pipe that's broken, you're going to have to fix it. Those represent some long-term liabilities as opposed to long-term money makers, because you've got to keep that up. When we talked to Verso, I don't know what kind of arrangements were originally made to bring the line through the mill. In talking to the mill's engineers, they couldn't find anything hard on what was there. There was even some question about the routing of the pipe. What we did see, though, and what we have seen in the way of the repairs that were made, make long-term maintenance of that line extremely difficult and very dangerous. And like I said, at some point, the railroad is likely to say, we're not going to deal with this liability. If you're going to continue to use it, you have to put steel casing under there, and where that line is relative to some of the structures at the mill, that would be very, very difficult. So what's been proposed is to go under the river, connect to Westernport, bring a line all the way to the 2 tanks at the water plant, and then the system would function as it does right now. You are correct in the way of lost water. There are things that need to be looked at with that. And there is a second phase project that is included with the connection to go through and make some of those improvements and see if that can be reduced.
Who pays for the second phase, Terry? Is that something we absorb, or is there a grant for that as well?
We'll have to work on that when the time comes. I mean, it's, you gotta get this place done, but I'll go back where it goes, this is the, you're ready.
Just have your water connection, collect the water bill.
Where are you gonna bring the water over from Westernport?
Right beside the bridge. Our understanding is there was a crossing there at one time already.
You're talking at the Westernport Piedmont Bridge?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do a directional drill there and then work with Piedmont to see exactly where the connection is going to be. We have seen the cap flanges that are there, that were there at one time, and bring it across there. The one other thing I'd like to address relative to West Virginia operators and what you have to do on this side. The distance between Westernport Water Plant and your tanks is not great. You do indeed have to look at chlorine content and chlorine byproducts if you get really long lines and a lot of storage that sets out in the system. We have some clients that have 100, 150 miles of pipeline and have got 3 or 4 or even 10 tanks. And the farther out you go, the more you hold the water, the more difficult it is to manage that. And you are right with that. You have to be very careful. West Virginia law does require that you have a distribution system operator here. And you're going to have somebody here anyway, because you don't want somebody else tinkering with your valves and your hydrants and everything. As far as the standards go, the standards that all of the water systems across the country are required to adhere to, and the ones that are essentially mirror image of what the state mirrors, is the Safe Drinking Water Act at the federal level. All of the states incorporate that into their statute, and those are the baselines. Depending on the condition of the water and the source of the water, and the peculiarities of the locations that you're drawing the water from, there's some, particularly as you go west of the Mississippi, that have sky-high arsenic limits. You've got places that have got contamination from jet fuel and those things. You have different limits, but otherwise the rules that we're working for or to meet, whether it's Westernport or here, are not different. If I'm not mistaken, Terry, Cumberland serves water to Ridgely, and so we've got that same situation just up or down the river where that's coming across, and that's not terribly uncommon when you have border counties, whether it's down on the Tug Fork in the southern part of the state, or we're over on the Ohio. There are instances where you've got water mains that crisscross and you serve out of state. But there is a set of standards that is uniform. So it's, that's correct, Kaiser and Allegheny County. So the standards are very similar, and the EPA has done a very good job at making sure that things are compatible state to state, so that everybody is not doing different things. Also, the licensing requirement for the operators. Ernie's license and any operator here in the state can apply for reciprocity, and the same for out of state. All of these operators are trained the same. They have mobile licenses, so everybody's working on the same set of rules.
Sir, what exactly liability is the mill talking about with this water line on their bridge? What liability are they looking at?
The bridge is a liability simply because it's there. Somebody falls off of it, somebody gets hurt on it, that's on them. And the same deal with a leak on the line that's on their bridge. That bridge, as we understand from talking to their engineer, while it's functional now, long term, there's some questions about what they would have to do to keep it viable and keep it safe. And and current practice has been to get the lines off the bridges because they do rust, the supports rust, and when you're working with the West Virginia Department of Highways, for instance, there are a handful of instances where they will permit a water main to be tied onto a bridge and hung from a bridge, but they discourage that considerably. But when we met with their engineer, they want the bridge gone up.
That just don't make sense. I mean, they got facilities down here on this side of the bridge. It doesn't make sense.
Tell me who their engineer was, Randy?
Deborah?
Brett?
Yes.
She's an engineer, is she?
Okay.
Set them up, punch.
Yeah.
Hey, Fred, I want to ask.
She spent about 4 months here.
I asked you something, Fred.
Yeah, no,
I'm
no.
not against you, but a lot of these people that's here with Versner now, there's no idea about this.
She got hired a month before they announced the
We've
shutdown.
had here and the agreements we've had with that mill for years. They made up their mind, that's what they want to do, and I don't think they were even aware of the history of
I
this mill and
have
the.
no doubt about that. That was obvious the first time we met, because clearly that pipeline has been there a long time, and that there's no way that would have been put in without more than a handshake agreement. But when we talked to them, and Terry, I think that you've been just about in all the meetings we've been in, that's what they're telling us. We asked for maps, we asked for contracts, we asked for rights-of-ways, and we didn't get anything. And
That line was put on that bridge around 1969.
Yeah, and I'll take, I grew up in the southern part of the state in a railroad town, coal town, had 29 tracks in it. And as the joke goes, until it was the Chesapeake Ohio Railroad until I was about 16 or 17. I thought C&O was a brand name of ball peen hammer, because everybody had a ball peen hammer had C&O stamped on it. But as time went by and become CSX, that at one time the railroad provided water to everybody in town, and it become a big, bigger corporation. And now there's 3 tracks in town, and the street drains stay clogged up where they used to keep them unclogged, and it was just a change. I mean, just a big corporation. It become a big corporation. We went from a small family thing to a big corporation type thing.
Well, the mill, I could say the mill did still maintain our pumps and made repairs to our water lines up there up until probably around New Page took over.
Well, it changed when the old man Luke went to New York and give everything to the boys, and they had no ties to this area, and they say, and so they started selling that paper mill. Then we ought to know that, whoa, we're going to be in trouble.
And we need to figure our way out of this.
That's right. We're so used to getting something free. Let me tell you something. There's nothing free in this country.
Well, she's gone, who you dealing with?
We haven't heard anything for a little bit, and when they made the changeover to Westernport's line, their pressure went up. And I know they made that change without bothering to tell Ernie, and they exceeded the pressure rating of the pipe and blew it apart in a couple of places. So the pipe's fragile. We know that from what we've seen of it. So again, to put a utility as small as you guys into that position is one we simply don't recommend, because working around the railroad, we've got a lot of clients, like Terry said, where CSX and what was Norfolk Southern has got the tracks. They're pushing out to make sure that things don't come apart, and that you have all of the most recent requirements met. One other thing I'd like to say in closing is this. We too are not fans of closing water production facilities. I live in Charleston, and we got to see what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. we carried water for 17 or 18 days straight, and we couldn't drink it for almost 6 months. Unfortunately, my brother has a well, lives about 10 miles up the river from us, and we got it. So we're not fans of that. Anytime you have a water production facility, you have more strength in what you're able to do. But the issues that you have now are one of critical mass and having enough revenue to keep up what you have. The water plant has a lot of mechanicals in it, and there has to be a budget place, even if everything was up to speed today. You're talking about 10 years worth of service life with pumps as we have them today, with chemical metering pumps and those things. So there's a lot of long-term maintenance that will be perpetual. And that was one of the arguments that the health department made. The last thing I'll close with is this. The health department, more so than any of the other agencies, pushed very hard to get the connection made because their concern is long-term viability of the little utilities. They see it a lot in their work. We see it a lot in clients that we have in common with Todd and Michael, and that we work with Terry, that there comes a point where you don't have enough customers to keep up with things, and then you have to count on people being able to come up with grant monies over and over and over again. And right now, the way that the state is structured, it's almost impossible to get that on a short term. And so it leaves you with the prospect of being out of water, and I don't think anybody wants to march forward with that.
Well, I'll say this because I gotta go, but not a big fan of being dependent on Westernport, but on the same token, we're also giving up some liability and putting it on them. I just hope we have the attorneys working on this that protects our butts long term, that we don't get gouged by them. That's my only fear. I have no problem with the water system. You know, I'm friends with these people, but we about hung ourselves out to dry because really there is no agreement with the mill. Right? There's nothing there. Hopefully it'll work out. Like I said, I hate to be dependent on them, but I hope we lock them up tight whenever we do come up with an agreement with the town of Westernport. I guess.
Good lawyer, all the papers. Right there? Okay.
Mr. Auditor? One more question to you. What is I'm assuming you've looked at numbers as far as gallons that's been processed, on average processed gallons per month?
Not as much. I think there's a big difference too. You know, the primary focus for getting your rates and to meet your current obligations doesn't have anything. I haven't taken the next step of, okay, if we were to buy water, or I've looked at it just tangentially and just from when we went to the infrastructure council, but the focus of what I've done for your rates today would assume you're operating as you do right now. It's not a matter of buying water or keeping producing. I can tell you that you know, we started down the path with on the town on going forward with our project as we originally wanted. Well, you know, maintain our own source, doing our own treatment. I can tell you, the regulatory agencies that regulate you, Public Service Commission, Health Department, and the funding agencies that make determinations, they actually kicked our case back and said, come back to us with a purchased water from the other source. I mean, so we hadn't even got to the point of, you know, getting fine-tuning down how much is it going to cost us versus how much is it going to cost us to buy. We hadn't even got down to make the arguments or even to look at it to that level. We were pretty much pushed back on it. So, but for us to get grants and get consideration, the first thing they said to us was, you're running a significant deficit. Piedmont needs to address today, before we even talk any about grant and loan packages and that kind of stuff. And that's one of the reasons we're, taking care of that first. And my anticipation is it's gonna be basically forced on us to come back with a project to go to Westernport to purchase water. If there is a benefit to that, I think it's gonna help Terry for us to get it in all grants. That's just my thought. Of course, I work for Piedmont, and if they say to go this, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing realistically and what the folks that regulate you have said publicly, basically. So I haven't got down to the fine tooth that you're describing just because of that reason.
Well, basically what my question was what the anticipated cost if we purchase water from Westernport on a monthly basis compared to income.
My initial thought was these rates with, depending on how much we can keep your the unaccounted for water becomes a much bigger factor when you're buying water because you're gonna pay for what is lost.
That's my point.
That is
the last
where,
report I seen, they're showing a 40% loss.
and that
There's
is,
no way we're losing 40% of water.
it's what the numbers show as
The
far
numbers
as.
says
I know
we
what
just
the
had
numbers
new
show,
lines
but
all
there's
put
no
here a
way.
couple of years ago. We got brand new lines.
And I can tell you, well, I'm not gonna get into it.
Well, I mean, when I look at numbers of, water produced in the meter, whatever that meter generates for a report and water sales, it's pretty easy. The difference is X. So if for some reason the water sales are lower than what they actually are, or the water that's going into the lines, if that's different, yeah, it's gonna change your percentage. But
Yeah, because the last report I seen was 1.5 million gallons processed. They sold 996,000 gallons. And there was some line items on there where water was used, which I know it wasn't correct. I know for a fact it was not correct. So with that in mind, with what they produced and what they sold, they showed a 40% loss. And there is no way this town's losing 40% of their water.
I sure hope not. That's that's
I hope not too.
That's a big
If
number.
we're losing 40% of our water, there's something drastically wrong.
We're gonna
And
be
if
screwed.
they're gonna have to pay that amount of 1.5 million a month. I'm just using that figure because that's what November's report had. And you're only gonna sell, you're only gonna collect the money on a percentage of that.
Yeah,
No wonder, no
that is
wonder
a huge issue. Yes.
we're sitting here looking at 56% increase, or whatever it is.
Westernport already said they wasn't gonna give you any breaks for leakage or fire. If you have a fire and you gotta use a million gallons of water, you gotta pay for it. Somebody has a leak. The way it is now, somebody in town has a leak, the town makes an adjustment for that, because that's on the household itself. Whereas if we hook to Westernport, and they have that leak, there's not gonna be any adjustment there. And that's
You're still required to make adjustments. It'll just, that'll be more cost that have to be allocated.
Town's gonna absorb it.
yeah, the town's gonna have to decide that.
One of the things that we need to talk about there for just a minute is the rate of $1.05 a thousand is very, very low compared to a lot of the clients that we all work with. And when you look at that, the purchase price at the $1.05, that is actually a little less than what it's costing you to produce it. Because at the end of this whole exercise, in order to produce the gallon of water versus purchase it, you still have to treat it. You've got chlorine, you've got pumpage, you've got an operator that is tied to the plant all the time that water is being produced. So you've got quite a few expenses that are tied to the plant. Once you buy the water, those expenses are going to go away. When we made our recommendations to Michael as far as what the operation and maintenance did, again in a similar vein of what we did with the schedule, we had only a part of the costs that are tied to that plant or recommended as being eliminated because we wanted to make sure you still had the operators there and we want a little bit of cushion there to see where the expenses go. But the cost of purchase at $1.05 and the cost of production are going to be very similar. I know when we're working, I was at a meeting last night where up outside of Fairmont, Michael, with the town of Fairview, and their purchase price is going to be $3.25. And that's typical to what we see that, I think in the case of Kaiser and McCool, it's something like $2 or $1.86, something like that.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
there, those are fairly close. A couple of other things with lost water, that's a term that we paint with a real broad brush because that includes things like backwash and new filters. Every time he filters a backwash, there are 10,000 gallons of water that goes down the drain after the filters are cleaned. In terms of that showing up on a report, that is the same as if it leaked. Same with flushing and fire hydrants and that. So I think in Michael now the proper term non-revenue water,
Right.
because even though it shows up on the report as lost water, it's simply water that you couldn't bill for. And so even though a lot of those, or the numbers look a little bit inflated, they aren't always indicative of pure leakage.
But there is a limit on that loss.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
The one other
I
thing-
can't see where we're losing 20%.
The one other
even
thing I'll
like
say
you're
with
saying.
I'm sorry.
So just to clarify for myself, these proposed rates, how related are they to the switch to Westernport versus making the city in compliance?
They're not related to the future water source
So they're
choice.
just to make the city in compliance?
These are compliance related for the current operations.
Fair. What'd you ask a minute ago, Krista? Did you say something?
And she had a question, I couldn't hear
How
it,
much
so
is what we were incorporated?
it wouldn't impact, this is only for water operations. Incorporation or corporation of the utility wouldn't impact. The only thing that would change would be, if you're unincorporated, you wouldn't have a utility tax on top of your water or your sewer charges in town. If you have, I think you have one that most places do. But that would be the only change I can think of that reflects on what your water charge would be.
And in terms of how much Westernport's going to charge us for water, we were also told that if we have a fire, your house burns down, you got to pay for that water. I mean, that's, is that true? I mean, it's,
Well, I know there are other water utilities now where the water utility actually sends a bill, in West Virginia, sends a bill to the insurance company for a home. There are some that, I see that. But I'm not sure about that but that would be a decision of Piedmont, whether they're going to pass on a charge for something that happens in Piedmont. You're clearly going to pay for whatever water comes over to you. But
Yeah, we was worried about filling our swimming pool.
Yeah.
And they said they wouldn't give us a break.
no, I mean, you're going to pay for what goes through the meter. There's no
so
doubt.
they're going to dictate to us, and I understand if we're buying it off them, I guess that's pretty much what they're going to do. But it's like Terry said, and I can appreciate that, the cost of the chemicals and everything is up to treat the water. It's going to go up over there too.
Yes.
And it's,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
I
not gonna
just-
stay at 105, that's for
Yeah.
sure. One of the concerns that we also had, because just so you know, we went into this with the argument, and my first thought was, if it's $25 per customer in Piedmont, we were in an argument on behalf of Piedmont with all those folks that I've been telling you about. And our additional concern was, and this was, I think the mayor and some of the folks that passed on to us is, okay, they're in Maryland, what's our protection? You know, they sell us water, say it is $1.05, and they want to decide something else. Because we were concerned about because if you're in West Virginia, we could file a complaint against somebody at the PSC. Well, the West Virginia PSC folks met with the Maryland PSC folks that would also, they've told us, at least verbally, it is also still regulated. So they can't, if they would take some action against us, it's not in the best interest. We would be able to file a similar complaint like we're here and let the Maryland Public Service Commission decide it, just like it would be in West Virginia. I was fearful of some of the same things that you're talking about, is, you know, when you cross the state line and we don't have, you know, regulatory structure here, we were worried about that. In West Virginia PSC, they were worried about it on behalf of Piedmont and other West Virginia customers. And that's what they've told us, at least verbally, that they would still be a regulated act coming across the state line water. So if there's something that's, now, if their power goes up and they have a rate increase and it comes and impacts you and it's not unfair or wasn't unreasonable or them passing on costs, then you could complain. But you're gonna have those, because all the things we're talking about, you're gonna have increases when they're treating the water too, so.
That's why it's gonna be really hard for a lot of people to afford the 50% increase. I mean, I know my husband worked for us, so.
One question,
That's pretty bad.
how would that impact the treatment plant over here? Is there?
Your treatment plant?
No, the one,
We're gonna be in the same situation with the sewer plant like we were right now about a year or
That's
two.
it, yeah.
Because the treatment plant was 95% paper mill waste.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have to pay a percentage to keep that cleaned up, so our sewer rate's gonna go up too after this.
I'm not aware of this.
Really
And they've already laid people off there because there's not enough place to do it to keep anybody working. So we're gonna end up having to pay more to keep that plant running. So in a year or two, we're gonna be in the same scenario with the water as we are for sewer.
In other words, we gotta get our house in order before we can go to Westernport and get that straightened out. Well, I think we need to get our house in order first, then, because it's not gonna be long till October, right around the corner. So I say, let's get our house in order. I'm for that.
Yes, it wasn't worth talking about.
But I'm only one person.
The creek.
They can't because it's already a pool capacity.
That's what I thought it would look like.
Yeah, I think we need to get our house in order.
That's both the creek.
Maintain that.
As soon as that, if you go creek on this, they can put it on.
They want that, but it's already.
So they work with the numbers they were given. But here's the thing, what they're telling us is our water line is compared to the current. And if it is, then our water rate will go up. Did he say we have to pay for distribution I think
Like everything else is going on.
It's no reflection of
I'll just tweak the ordinance a little bit just to show, some of
Okay, everybody done with your questions? Yeah, we're gonna call this public hearing, close the public hearing, and we don't have a quorum to vote on this having the second reading, so we're going to call a special meeting, and we'll post that on the door and on the city page when we have
Oh, we
that.
can't vote on it.
Did Ben quit?
Huh?
Did Ben, did he quit? Well, one mistake, you said yes, and you're saying no.
He's
Did Ben
saying-
quit?
He wants to, I'm trying to talk to
Did he
him.
or didn't he? Did he turn in resignation or anything?
We have not read it.
Huh?
We haven't got a resignation yet.
How about Dawn? She hasn't been in
I'm
a meeting
asking,
since she
I'm
was
not
sworn
trying to
in.
be smart.
Has she quit
Did
too?
Ben quit? I was told that Ben quit.
Ben said he quit.
Huh?
She said-
Ben said he quit.
That's what I'm
We
asking.
have no right.
That's the only question.
Now, nothing official. It's not official, but.
Yes.